Imagine America in the mid-1800s, a time when classrooms were strict, curiosity was discouraged, and children were expected to obey rather than question. Into this rigid world, in 1847, Thomas Alva Edison was born. From the very beginning, Edison did not fit the system designed for ordinary minds. As a young child, he was restless, endlessly curious, and constantly asking why. In school, this curiosity was not praised, it was punished. Teachers complained that Edison was distracted, slow, and incapable of learning. They could not understand that his mind was not weak, but wildly active, constantly jumping ahead, connecting ideas, and imagining possibilities far beyond the chalkboard. Within a short time, the school system rejected him, labeling him unteachable. That moment, for most children, would have marked the end of confidence and the beginning of limitation. For Edison, it became the first silent turning point of greatness. When Edison returned home after being expelled, his mother, Nancy Edison, sensed something the world had failed to see. A former teacher herself, she recognized that her son did not lack intelligence. He lacked patience for meaningless rules. She refused to let society define her child's future. Instead of forcing him back into a system that had already failed him, she created a new one. Their home became his classroom. Books replaced report cards. Questions replaced memorization. Edison's education shifted from formal instruction to self-driven exploration, and this single change would shape everything that followed. Under his mother's guidance, Edison learned how to learn. He read obsessively: science, mechanics, chemistry, physics, biographies of inventors and thinkers. He did not read to pass exams. He read to satisfy curiosity. Hours disappeared as he absorbed information, tested ideas, and imagined how things could work differently. His basement became a laboratory filled with wires, bottles, chemicals, and half-finished experiments. Explosions, spills, and failures were common, but fear was absent. Where other children saw mess, Edison saw discovery. Where others feared mistakes, Edison welcomed them as lessons. This unconventional education gave Edison something formal schooling never could: independence of thought. He was not trained to follow instructions blindly. He was trained to experiment. He did not wait for permission to explore ideas. He learned early that knowledge was not owned by institutions, but earned through curiosity and effort. This mindset would later allow him to challenge scientific assumptions, improve existing inventions, and refuse to accept limitations others believed were permanent. As Edison grew older, financial hardship forced him into work at a young age. He sold newspapers on trains, working long hours, often surviving on little sleep. But even during exhaustion, his mind remained alive. He read during breaks, conducted small experiments whenever possible, and observed machines with intense focus. Every job became a classroom. Every challenge became training. While other boys dreamed of comfort, Edison dreamed of understanding how the world worked beneath the surface. One of the most defining moments of his early life came when he discovered telegraphy. The rhythmic clicking of signals fascinated him. To others, it was a job. To Edison, it was magic. Invisible forces traveling through wires, carrying information across distance. He taught himself how the machines worked, how signals were sent, how electricity behaved. This was not taught in schools. It was learned through obsession. Telegraphy did not just give Edison employment, it gave him direction. Throughout these years, Edison faced loneliness, rejection, and self-doubt. He was different, and he knew it. He did not fit socially, and he did not try to. Instead, he turned inward, strengthening his resilience. He learned to work alone, think alone, and persist without applause. This emotional endurance became one of his greatest strengths. Long before success arrived, Edison had already mastered patience. By the end of his early education years, Edison possessed something far more valuable than a diploma. He had discipline, curiosity, tolerance for failure, and an unshakable belief that effort mattered more than talent. He had learned that intelligence was not about how quickly you answer questions, but how deeply you explored them. The boy once labeled slow was quietly building a mind capable of changing the world. As this chapter closes, the narrator leaves us with a powerful image. A young man, rejected by formal education, standing alone with books, wires, and ideas, unaware that the habits formed in silence would one day illuminate cities, power industries, and redefine human progress. The journey had not yet reached invention or fame, but the foundation of greatness was already complete. As Thomas Edison stepped out of childhood and into adolescence, life did not suddenly become easier. In fact, the real test had only just begun. With no formal schooling, no prestigious degree, and very little money, Edison entered a world that rewarded conformity and punished difference. Yet even in uncertainty, one thing remained constant: his hunger to learn. At an age when most boys were still protected by family structure, Edison was already carrying responsibility on his shoulders. He began working as a newspaper seller on trains, waking before sunrise and returning late at night, his hands stained with ink, his clothes worn by labor. To many, this was a dead-end job. To Edison, it was survival and opportunity. Train stations became his classrooms. Between selling papers and snacks, Edison observed machines, engines, schedules, and systems. He listened carefully to conversations, learned how businesses operated, and studied human behavior. Every sound, every motion, every routine fascinated him. When other boys rested, Edison read. When others complained, Edison experimented. He saved small amounts of money not for comfort, but for books and materials. Even exhaustion could not quiet his curiosity. It was during these years that Edison encountered telegraphy, a technology that would change the direction of his life forever. The idea that information could travel instantly across wires seemed almost supernatural. Edison became obsessed. He did not enroll in a school to learn telegraphy. He taught himself. Night after night, he studied the machines, memorized signals, disassembled components, and reassembled them again. Failure was constant. Mistakes were frequent. But Edison did not view this as frustration. He saw it as training. As he moved from city to city, working as a telegraph operator, Edison lived a life of instability. He slept in boarding houses, train stations, and sometimes directly at his workplace. His income was inconsistent, and hunger was familiar. Yet even during these harsh conditions, Edison carried notebooks filled with ideas. He worked long shifts and spent his nights experimenting, often sleeping only a few hours before starting again. His body grew tired, but his mind sharpened. Edison was not an exceptional employee in the traditional sense. He was often fired for focusing more on experiments than assigned tasks. Supervisors complained that he was distracted, careless, and disobedient. But they misunderstood him. Edison was not careless. He was consumed by invention. When machines failed, he wanted to know why. When systems worked, he wanted to make them better. Authority meant little to him if it stood in the way of understanding. Failure followed Edison relentlessly during this period. Early inventions brought no financial reward. Some ideas failed completely. Others were stolen or ignored. Investors dismissed him as unreliable. Friends questioned his choices. There were moments when poverty pressed so heavily that survival itself felt uncertain. Yet Edison never abandoned his work. He believed deeply that progress was built through persistence, not approval. What truly separated Edison from others was his relationship with failure. While most people feared it, Edison embraced it. Each unsuccessful experiment became a lesson. Each broken machine revealed a hidden truth. He once said that he did not fail. He simply discovered ways that did not work. This mindset transformed struggle into fuel. Where others quit, Edison refined. Where others rested, Edison repeated. During these years, Edison began developing a discipline that bordered on obsession. He worked 16 to 18 hours a day, not because he was forced to, but because he was driven. Sleep became optional. Comfort became irrelevant. His life revolved around experimentation, learning, and improvement. He sacrificed relationships, leisure, and stability for a vision he could barely describe. A future shaped by invention. Slowly, quietly, Edison's skills deepened. He was no longer just a curious boy or a struggling worker. He was becoming a problem solver. He understood electricity not as theory, but as behavior. He learned machines not by reading manuals, but by breaking and rebuilding them. His mind developed endurance, focus, and creative resilience. These years of hardship did what comfort never could. They hardened his resolve. By the end of this phase, Edison was still far from famous. He was still poor, still unknown, still struggling. But something critical had changed. He had developed an identity, not as a student, not as a worker, but as an inventor. The failures, the hunger, the isolation, all of it had shaped a mindset capable of enduring what lay ahead. As the narrator closes this chapter, the image is clear. A young man alone in the dim light of a workshop, surrounded by wires and unfinished ideas, exhausted yet determined. The world had not yet noticed him. Success had not yet arrived. But the discipline, resilience, and obsession forged in these years were preparing Thomas Edison for the breakthroughs that would soon change history forever. By the time Thomas Edison entered his early 20s, he was no longer just a curious worker experimenting in silence. He had begun to see himself as something more dangerous to the ordinary world, an inventor who refused to accept things as they were. Yet this phase of his life was not marked by applause or recognition. It was defined by rejection, financial collapse, and relentless uncertainty. Edison had ideas, but ideas alone did not pay rent, attract investors, or guarantee survival. The world did not reward vision easily, and Edison was about to learn this lesson repeatedly. Edison's first serious attempts at invention were driven by a simple belief. Existing systems could always be improved. He focused on telegraph technology, trying to make communication faster, clearer, and more reliable. His mind worked obsessively, identifying inefficiencies others ignored. He created devices meant to automate telegraph signals, record messages, and reduce human error. On paper, the ideas were revolutionary. In reality, they were risky, expensive, and misunderstood. Early investors were skeptical. They wanted quick profits, not endless experimentation. Edison, however, moved slowly and methodically, constantly refining his work. This mismatch created tension. Projects collapsed. Funding disappeared. Promises fell apart. More than once, Edison found himself completely broke, his inventions unfinished, his reputation uncertain. At times, he was forced to sell his ideas for far less than their true value just to survive. One of the most painful lessons Edison learned during this period was that invention and business were not the same. He could build machines, but he struggled to sell them. Contracts were poorly written. Partners took advantage of his lack of business experience. Some inventions failed not because they lacked brilliance, but because the world was not ready for them. Each disappointment added pressure. But Edison refused to retreat. Despite repeated setbacks, Edison continued to work with terrifying intensity. He turned small rented spaces into workshops, filling them with tools, wires, metal parts, and half-finished devices. Sleep became irregular. Meals were often skipped. His life narrowed to a single focus, making something that worked, no matter how long it took. Friends worried about his health. Critics mocked his obsession. But Edison was building something deeper than machines. He was building persistence. It was during this difficult phase that Edison invented the stock ticker improvement, a device that would finally bring him financial stability. Unlike earlier projects, this invention met a clear market need. Businesses needed faster, more accurate stock information. Edison's solution worked, not perfectly at first, but well enough to prove his value. When the device was sold, Edison received a significant sum of money. For the first time in his life, he was not fighting hunger or eviction. Yet even this moment of success did not change Edison's nature. He did not buy comfort or luxury. Instead, he reinvested everything into research. With newfound financial breathing room, Edison made a decision that would define his legacy. He would no longer work alone or randomly. He would create a place where invention itself became systematic. This realization marked a turning point. Edison understood that great breakthroughs required space, time, tools, and focus. He envisioned an environment where ideas could be tested relentlessly, where failure was expected, and where experimentation was continuous. This vision would soon give birth to something the world had never seen before, a true industrial research laboratory. But before that dream could fully materialize, Edison faced yet another wave of doubt. Critics questioned whether his recent success was luck. Investors remained cautious. Many believed Edison was unreliable, too obsessive, too unconventional to be trusted long-term. But Edison had grown immune to doubt. He had lived with it too long to fear it now. What made this period so critical was not the inventions themselves, but the transformation taking place within Edison. He was no longer chasing validation. He was chasing mastery. Failure had lost its emotional power over him. Poverty had hardened him. Rejection had sharpened his focus. Where earlier setbacks might have crushed another man, they only clarified Edison's purpose. As this chapter draws toward its close, the narrator emphasizes a crucial truth. Most people quit just before progress becomes visible. Edison did not. He endured the invisible years, the years of loss, exhaustion, and humiliation, without knowing whether success would ever arrive. But he continued anyway. The final image of this part is not one of celebration, but preparation. Edison stands at the edge of something larger than himself. The failures have not stopped, but the direction is now clear. The inventor is ready to move beyond survival and into creation at scale. The world is still dark, but the mind that will soon light, it is fully awake. By the time Thomas Edison began working seriously on electric lighting, the idea itself was considered nearly impossible. Electricity existed, but was dangerous, unstable, and impractical for everyday use. Gas lamps still ruled the streets and homes, filling rooms with smoke, fire, and constant risk. Many scientists before Edison had tried to create an electric light and failed. Some even declared the problem unsolvable. When Edison announced that he intended to build a practical electric light bulb, critics laughed. Investors hesitated. Experts warned him that he was chasing a fantasy. But Edison did not see an impossible problem. He saw an unfinished one. Edison understood something others did not. The challenge was not just to make light, but to make it safe, affordable, and reliable. This meant solving dozens of interconnected problems at once. Filaments, vacuum systems, electrical resistance, power generation, wiring, and distribution. One invention would not be enough. An entire system had to be created. This realization dramatically increased the scale of the task, but Edison did not retreat. Instead, he committed fully, knowing the cost would be enormous. At Menlo Park, Edison transformed his laboratory into a battlefield of ideas. Days and nights blurred together as experiments ran continuously. Teams tested materials relentlessly, metals, plant fibers, carbonized substances, searching for a filament that could glow without burning out. Each failure consumed time, money, and energy. Thousands of experiments collapsed into disappointment. Bulb shattered. Filaments disintegrated. Vacuums failed. Weeks turned into months. Months turned into years. The pressure was crushing. Newspapers mocked him publicly, calling the project foolish. Investors grew impatient, demanding results or threatening to withdraw funding. Even Edison's closest collaborators felt doubt creeping in. The lab smelled of heat, chemicals, and exhaustion. Edison himself worked extreme hours, often collapsing on workbenches for short moments of sleep before continuing again. His health suffered. His relationships strained. But his belief never wavered. What separated Edison during this period was not intelligence, but endurance. Where others stopped after 100 failures, Edison continued after 1,000. He did not frame failure as defeat. He framed it as elimination. Each unsuccessful experiment removed one wrong answer from the list. His famous words echoed through Menlo Park. He had not failed. He had simply found thousands of ways that did not work. This philosophy kept despair from taking root. Eventually, after countless trials, Edison discovered a carbonized bamboo filament that burned longer and more steadily than anything before it. The breakthrough was quiet, almost anticlimactic. There was no sudden explosion of joy, only confirmation. The light stayed on. Minutes passed, then hours. The impossible had become real. But Edison did not celebrate yet. One success was not enough. The system had to be proven, refined, and scaled. Edison moved immediately to the next challenge: power distribution. A light bulb alone meant nothing without electricity reaching homes and streets. He designed generators, wiring networks, switches, meters, an entire infrastructure from scratch. Critics once again doubted him. The scale was unprecedented. Cities had never been electrified before. Safety concerns were massive. Financial risk was overwhelming. But Edison pressed forward, convinced that the world was ready to change. When Edison finally demonstrated electric lighting publicly, the reaction was transformative. Streets illuminated without flame. Buildings glowed without smoke. Darkness retreated. What humanity had accepted for thousands of years suddenly changed in a single generation. The light bulb was not just an invention, it was a turning point in civilization. Yet even at this peak moment, Edison remained grounded. He knew the success was not magic. It was the result of years of exhaustion, rejection, and belief held against reason. The world saw brilliance. Edison remembered failure, and that memory kept him humble, hungry, and focused. As the narrator closes this chapter, the image is unforgettable. A world once ruled by darkness now glowing under electric light, and behind it, a man who endured ridicule, doubt, and relentless failure. Not because success was guaranteed, but because quitting was never an option. The light bulb did more than illuminate homes. It illuminated a truth. Perseverance can change the world. With the success of electric lighting, Thomas Edison crossed a line few inventors ever reach. He was no longer just creating devices. He was shaping systems, industries, and the future itself. Menlo Park, once a modest laboratory fueled by obsession and exhaustion, became the heart of a new way of thinking. It was here that Edison transformed invention from a solitary act into a structured, repeatable process. This shift would quietly redefine how progress was made for generations to come. Edison surrounded himself with engineers, mechanics, chemists, and thinkers who shared his tolerance for failure and his hunger for improvement. He demanded intensity, long hours, and absolute commitment. The laboratory rarely slept. Ideas were tested relentlessly, discarded without mercy, and rebuilt with precision. Edison led not through comfort, but through example. He worked longer than anyone else, pushed himself harder, and expected the same discipline from his team. Critics called him harsh. Supporters called him visionary. What mattered to Edison was results. During this period, Edison's output exploded. Motion pictures, sound recording, improved batteries, electrical meters, and countless refinements emerged from Menlo Park. Patents accumulated at an astonishing rate. But Edison's true genius was not invention alone. It was integration. He understood that isolated breakthroughs meant little without systems to support them. Electricity needed generators, wiring, switches, maintenance, and trained operators. Edison built all of it. As his companies expanded, so did conflict. Rival inventors challenged his claims. Corporations competed fiercely. Legal battles over patents became constant. Edison found himself navigating courts as often as laboratories. These struggles tested him in new ways. He was no longer fighting technical problems alone. He was fighting politics, economics, and power. Some conflicts he won, others he lost. But Edison adapted, learning that innovation at scale required strategy as much as creativity. Wealth and fame followed, but they did not soften him. Edison remained relentless, often detached, always focused forward. He sacrificed comfort, relationships, and rest in pursuit of progress. His personal life suffered under the weight of obsession. Yet Edison believed deeply that invention demanded sacrifice. To him, comfort was the enemy of curiosity. What emerged from this era was a legacy far larger than Edison himself. Menlo Park became the blueprint for modern research laboratories. The idea that teams could systematically innovate changed industries forever. Companies no longer waited for lone geniuses. They built environments where discovery could happen continuously. Edison had not just invented products. He had invented a process. As the narrator reflects on this chapter, the scale becomes clear. Cities electrified, communication accelerated, entertainment transformed, human life extended into the night. The modern world quietly assembled itself around ideas born in Edison's workshops. His empire was not built of stone or armies, but of light, sound, and motion. The chapter closes with a powerful image. Edison standing amid a web of wires, machines humming around him, no longer chasing survival, but shaping civilization. The boy once expelled from school had become an architect of modern life. And yet, his journey was not finished, because true legacy is measured not only by what is built, but by what endures. By the later years of his life, Thomas Edison had achieved something few humans ever do. His work had become invisible because it was everywhere. Electricity flowed through cities. Light extended human activity beyond sunset. Sound could be recorded, replayed, preserved. Motion could be captured and shown again. What once existed only in imagination had become routine. Yet Edison himself did not view this as a finish line. To him, success was never a destination. It was simply permission to continue working. Edison's reputation had grown immense. He was celebrated as a genius, a wizard, a symbol of modern progress. Governments honored him. Institutions praised him. Young inventors studied him. But behind the public image remained the same man shaped by struggle, restless, demanding, and unsatisfied. Even in old age, Edison worked relentlessly, often ignoring physical exhaustion. He believed that a mind at rest was a mind wasting its potential. Despite fame, Edison's life was not without regret. His obsession with work strained family relationships. He missed moments that could never be recovered. Critics accused him of being too controlling, too dismissive of collaborators. History would later debate how much credit belonged to Edison versus his teams. Yet even critics agreed on one truth. Edison created environments where innovation could survive failure. He made persistence respectable. He normalized experimentation. What truly defined Edison's legacy was not the number of patents, though they were many, but the philosophy he embodied. He taught the world that intelligence alone is not enough. Curiosity must be paired with discipline. Vision must be paired with endurance. Failure must be treated not as shame, but as data. Edison did not wait for perfect conditions. He worked with what he had, where he was again and again. As industries evolved and new technologies emerged, Edison's methods lived on. As the journey of Thomas Edison draws to its narrative conclusion, the story does not end in triumph alone. It stretches beyond awards, patents, and public recognition, reaching deep into the essence of what it means to persevere. Edison's life reminds us that the path to greatness is never a straight line. It is full of twists, setbacks, sleepless nights, failed experiments, and moments when the world seems indifferent or even hostile. Yet within that challenge lies the seed of transformation. The boy who was once expelled from school, dismissed as slow and incapable, becomes the man who illuminates cities, powers industries, and inspires generations. This is not just a tale of invention. It is a tale of human resilience, curiosity, and relentless determination. Picture the young Edison in his dimly lit workshop, surrounded by broken filaments, scattered wires, and a lingering smell of chemicals. Outside, the world continued unaware, but inside, a mind refused to surrender. Each failure was met not with despair, but with analysis, adjustment, and renewed effort. Every night he toiled, he carried with him an invisible understanding that persistence is far more powerful than talent alone, that creativity thrives on discipline, and that the greatest breakthroughs often emerge from the darkest hours. The narrator invites the listener to step into those workshops, to feel the tension, the isolation, and the spark of possibility that defined Edison's journey. Edison's success was never accidental. It was deliberately constructed, piece by piece, through repeated trial and error. And yet, the story of Edison's life is more than the sum of inventions. It is the story of mindset, a mindset that refuses to accept impossible, a mindset that treats failure as feedback, not a verdict, a mindset that understands the importance of curiosity, observation, and relentless practice. The narrator reaches the listener here, emphasizing that Edison's life is a blueprint for anyone seeking to create, innovate, or challenge convention. It is a reminder that the limits we perceive are often self-imposed, and that courage is forged in the silent moments of perseverance. The legacy Edison leaves is multi-layered. Cities lit up with electricity, homes illuminated by bulbs, sound recorded and replayed, images captured and shared. These are tangible results. Yet the intangible legacy is even more profound, a testament to human ingenuity and patience. Edison's story urges us to reconsider the meaning of success. It is not defined by fame, wealth, or instant recognition. True success lies in the unseen hours of relentless effort, in the willingness to continue when the world doubts you, and in the courage to imagine a reality that others cannot yet see. Even as Edison grew older, as recognition and fortune arrived, he never rested. The narrator paints him not as a man consumed by ego, but by purpose to explore, to innovate, to test the limits of human possibility. The late nights, the moments of isolation, the repeated setbacks, these were never obstacles, but the crucible in which the man and his mind were forged. The audience is drawn into the emotional core of these years, understanding that the comfort of achievement is fleeting, but the satisfaction of creation is enduring. The narrator reaches deeper now, reflecting on the human aspect of Edison's journey. Personal sacrifices, strained relationships, and endless toil remind the listener that greatness often demands cost. Yet, the richness of impact outweighs personal loss. Edison's life teaches that the value of work is not measured in hours spent, but in the transformation it enables, the difference it makes to society, to generations, and to the trajectory of human progress. His story becomes a meditation on balance, determination, and vision. Finally, the narrator draws a universal lesson from Edison's life, reaching beyond biography to philosophy. Every challenge we face, every failure we endure, every doubt we overcome carries within it the potential for illumination. Edison's journey is proof that curiosity, patience, and persistence are far more powerful than circumstance, criticism, or temporary defeat. Each listener is invited to reflect on their own life, to see failure not as a stop sign, but as a stepping stone, to understand that every idea, no matter how small or improbable, has the potential to change the world if pursued with unwavering commitment. And as the extended outro concludes, the final image lingers, a world once dark, now glowing under the light of countless inventions, and behind it all, the quiet but relentless mind of Thomas Edison, a mind that never yielded, a spark that never extinguished. The narrator's voice fades with a gentle insistence. The light Edison ignited lives on in us, waiting for each listener to embrace their own curiosity, to experiment bravely, and to persist, no matter the darkness. Because the truth Edison's life reveals is timeless. The light of human ingenuity, once kindled, never truly fades.